Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are closing in on the trade deadline of 2040. Pirates, as you can see, 8.5 games out in the Central, and we are 7 games out for the wild card with multiple teams to get past in both cases. So after a lot of success last season, surprising 94 win season in NL Central title, Pirates have really come down to earth this year. Positively is that we're playing better than our record. You can see we actually have a positive run differential this year. We should be 56 and 52. So that's a small positive. But the team is struggling as of late. There's no doubt about it. When we look at how we've been performing recently, we've had losing records for 2 months in a row after a big May. 13th in the National League in runs scored, 2nd in runs allowed. So our pitching staff has been really good, but our offense just is not generating much at all. We did make a couple of trades of veteran players who weren't going to be back with us earlier today in game time, but at the end of our last episode, traded away Juru Romo, who we had signed as a free agent, and a minor league second baseman for a couple of prospects, as well as 27-year-old pitcher, or I guess 2 prospects. One's 27 and one's 22. And then we also traded away veteran shortstop Tony Fonseca to the Orioles, got another shortstop and some cash in return. At this point, what we're trying to do is figure out which of our players that aren't going to be back with us next year we can get some assets for. Either players that are heading into free agency or players that we're just not going to pick up their arbitration number because it's too high. I'm not totally going to throw in the towel on this season, but we're sellers more than we are buyers here on July 30th. But the hope is that we can still play over 500 ball over the last 2 months of the season, and if we do that, we'll see where we end up in the playoff race. We're clearly a long shot at this point, but we're not throwing in the towel, but we are going to get the team younger, and if there's veteran players who have some value, we are going to extract that value from them. And speaking of value, we can get some value for Chris Jackson, the left fielder who was a minor league free agent signing for us. Has batted just .232 this year, but does have 19 doubles and 11 home runs and 263 at-bats. So he's been a pretty positive offensive player for us. But he's going to be a free agent after this season. Be 33 years old in a couple of days. And he's also not a brilliant defensive player. So unlikely that we'll be bringing him back next year. And our old buddies, the Royals, seem the most interested in him, and we're going to trade him for Luis Linares. I mentioned that with Fonseca gone, a shortstop could be an issue for us next year. And Linares kind of is pretty good defensively, but he's also not a horrible offensive player. Over the course of his career, he's put up an 86 OPS plus, 85 WRC plus, and is a decent defensive player. He's starting to get to the point where he's going to make some money. His arbitration number next year is going to be about $4.5 million. So we're going to have to continue to take talent off the team to run it back with Linares next year. But I think he will instantly become our starting shortstop. I don't know that he's quite as good defensively as Fonseca, but I think he's certainly in a similar neighborhood. Again, the arbitration number next year at $4.4 million is going to be high for the Pirates, but for a starting shortstop, if he ends up being that, is manageable. And if we don't want to bring him back, we obviously don't need to, but not a bad return for a guy that we picked up as a free agent just about 4 or 5 months ago. And in addition to getting Linares, we can also get starting pitcher Cortez Ronquillo, second round pick for the Royals back in 2035 when we were their general manager. Doesn't really look like he's really going to develop to be a major league pitcher. He's been in Double-A for the last 3 years, but he is durable. He's not quite yet 24 years old, so we'll roll the dice on bringing on Ronquillo also in addition to Linares. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. Fans happy that we brought on Linares, so even better. So Jackson is gone. Linares is going to be going on to the Major League roster. And my assumption is he's going to slot right in as our starting shortstop, according to manager Jan Vasquez's depth chart. Linares. So we had wanted to get Avanzi some playing time, but I think Linares is clearly a better player. So hopefully he's someone who can help us remain competitive this year. And again, it maybe between 4 and 5 million next year could be our short to medium term answer at shortstop. And Dave Urquiza is a player who's been with us for the last couple years. Starter last year, more of a utility guy this year. He's unhappy with his role. Does have the captain personality, but with the trade we made at the end of last episode, we did bring another captain personality onto the team. So I think we can survive without Urquiza. He's unhappy here. He's making $9.1 million, even though we're playing only about 30% of that. But he's also looking for over $9 million for 3 years in terms of his new contract. So certainly not somebody that we are going to be looking to bring back. So we are going to see exactly what we can get for Mr. Urquiza in a trade and likely move on from him also. And in the case of Urquiza, I think we're going to try to build a trade around catcher Julio Quinones of the Padres. He's a solid defensive catcher, good work ethic, not much of a hitter, but he's an Iron Man. He could end up being our backup catcher next season. Right now, we've got Heel signed next year. And I think it's pretty unlikely that we're going to be able to bring back Fuchs, whose arbitration number is close to $9 million. So it's conceivable next season that we just go pure defense at catcher with Heel and Quinones. So I think he's an interesting guy to bring into our system. And although we're going to have him on the Major League roster because he hasn't been optioned at all this season, he does have one option year left. Going to make, probably a little over $2 million next year. But if he needs to go down to AAA, we can. Now it means that if we don't decide to move on from Fuchs right now, we're going to have 3 catchers on our Major League roster, given that none of our are really great hitters. That's probably not ideal. And I guess there's an argument that could we just try to find a catcher in March like we did this season? With Drew Romo. So maybe I'm talking myself out of it. It's just there's not a ton of great options, quite honestly. There's a lot of offers for him, but not a lot of players that really have me all that interested, to be completely honest with you. The other guys I'm thinking about are Omar Rivas, who's a shortstop with AAA with the Cubs. He's not really that great defensively. He can play first base probably. He could play left field if you had to. I mean, pretty much any position you put him at, you're kind of like, we can kind of live with him there. But he's not that great defensively. But does look like he's got a little bit of a bat for an offensive player, and he's only 24 years old. So he's one of the other guys we're thinking about picking up for Urquiza. And then the last guy we're looking at is Aiden White from the Nationals, also in AAA. Also a versatile defensive player, but not particularly good anywhere defensively. Kind of a natural third baseman. I don't think he's quite potential hitter. None of these guys are all that exciting. The nice thing about Aiden White is that he does have 3 option years left. I just don't think he's ever going to really hit all that much. I mean, he is hitting 288 down in AAA this year, but not a ton of power, not a ton of extra base hits. Certainly doesn't have the profile of a big-time major league hitter. I think I'm going to go with the catcher, Quinones. Why can't I say Quinones? I'm going to go with the catcher, Julio Quinones. As I said, I think we're going to have to move on from Fuchs after this season. If you look at our salary situation at this point, we are at $95.1 million, so almost $30 million more than we're spending right now, which would mean we're going to have to completely gut the money that we're putting into scouting and player development if we keep these people around. Fuchs at this point is going to be making about $8 million. Ernesto Moreno is looking at a $12 million arbitration number. So if we move on from both of them either now in the off season, that clears about $20 million off of our payroll. And then Heel, could potentially team up next year is our catching duo with Quinones. So we're going to see if we can get a little more from the Padres, but I think it's time for Dave Urquiza to move on. And I like the deal even more now that we got them to add in a good amount of cash. So Urquiza is definitely a guy who can help San Diego as they're trying to win now. We may have found our backup catcher for next season, also get a nice chunk of cash. So we are going to go ahead and complete that trade. Players aren't happy that Urquiza left, but as I talked about, we did add another captain personality not that long ago, so hopefully we can survive without him. So now as we head into the trade deadline day, we did get a win yesterday against the Phillies, 8 games out in the division. Still obviously a long shot that we're going to make the playoffs this year, but not completely throwing in the towel. Question is really, what do we do with a couple of players with big salaries, notably Ernesto Moreno and Adam Fuchs? I think we keep Kager around at third base, even though he's going to be a free agent. He's just so solid defensively. And the offers for him were kind of similar to the guys who were offered for us for Urquiza, so no real game changers. We're unlikely to sign him next year. Looking for about $7.5 million a year for 4 years, which I think is a little high for what he is. But given that we're kind of trying to thread the needle of getting rid of some people that we absolutely don't need this year, while still trying to kind of keep the team competitive, because we do have the second best pitching staff in terms of runs allowed in the National League. I just don't think we're getting enough for Kager to move on from him. We also yesterday tried to shop Tony Espinoza, who we picked up in the trade for Texas. Would love to move on from him. He's hitting just 207 and 92 at-bats. Literally, there were no offers for him yesterday. We've only got 5 shop attempts left, even though it's the last day before the trade deadline. That's disappointing. You're just going to have to trust me that Espinoza, we got no offers for him yesterday. I'm not expecting there to be any offers today. If there were if I could shop 10 players today, I would shop him again, but I don't want to risk it in case I go crazy shopping players and want to move on. Ernesto Moreno, I'm going to be making $12 million likely-ish through arbitration next year. He's a player who wants to start, so he's unhappy with us. I haven't given him ever an opportunity to start with us. As you can see, he's never started a game, even though I know some of you have said we should. He's been a very effective arm out of the bullpen. But even if he comes back next season as a starter, I just don't think we can afford to be spending $12 million on him. The issue is just that we haven't gotten incredible offers from him. So actually what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to package up Moreno and Fuchs, the two big guys, and just see what we can get in terms of a prospect package. If we just took the guys who combined are going to be making probably $20 million next season that we're unlikely to have back, what's the best we can get for the two of them as a package? I'm guessing it's not going to be all that attractive in the context of the whole world of baseball, but we'll see. We'll take a look. Yeah, and we're giving up, additional players like Tony Cook, Victor Serrano. And we could get Dave Vasquez from Detroit. Really nice hitting prospect. Was their international free agent signing a couple years ago. Not the best personality in the world, but at least he's a legitimate big-time prospect. But a lot of these other offers, we're getting guys in return for these two relatively big-time players who are young, but just not really that good. Couple players from the Cardinals, Edgar Lizardi. Nice fielder, good personality, got some speed. Not a horrible hitting prospect. Only hitting .231 this year in high A ball after hitting .307 in A. And then Alex Sanchez. Not much of a fielder. Orioles would send us closer Juan Rivera. Not that exciting. The Guardians closer Julio Narvaez. Not bad. Having a pretty good year, split between A and high A. Only 22 years old, but he's clearly a reliever. So a decent reliever prospect. Sandy Nesbitt, first baseman from the Phillies. Not much of a fielder. Looks like he can be a decent bat. Hitting .355 in AAA this year, so he's been raking down there. Certainly a nice contact hitter with some home run power. He's durable, 23 years old. 6'2", he's never going to be a good fielder. But he's young and not a bad bat. Guess he's somebody to think about if we're really going to move on from both of these players. But we have to, I wasn't paying attention, we have to throw in the shortstop Linares to get him. So, no thank you. Donovan Sharp from the Mets. A reliever prospect, meh. Alex Smith from Kansas City, decent third baseman, but not that exciting, and we got to throw in a big-time prospect. Not looking like there's a lot that's going to interest us, because in most of these we have to throw in another pretty big prospect. Tony Liriano from the Twins. Looks like he can be a very nice reliever. Only 19 years old, was a fifth-round pick. Not doing all that much in rookie ball this year. But we also have to throw in Victor Serrano, who is a guy that we signed this year. We just moved him up to Double-A ball. He's, another one of our second base shortstop prospects for the future. We signed him to a minor league contract with a major league option in the offseason, and want to try to kind of keep him around because he may become he could be in the shortstop mix for us next year too. So can get 2 guys back from the Padres if we throw in one of the best starting pitching prospects in our system. No, thank you. Same thing with this offer. We're not going to throw in Luis Longoria. I'm sorry. If we throw in Marco Estrada, we can get a closer, Juan Balin. No thanks. So there's nothing, in my opinion, all that exciting in the offers that have been made to us. I think Vasquez is the most interesting, but don't love his personality, and we also have to throw in Serrano to get him. So just don't see there being too much there if we get rid of these guys. And with both of them, it's not like we have to trade them now. We can let them play with us the rest of this season, try to remain as competitive as possible, and then we can deal them all in late October, early November before they hit arbitration if we want to move on from them. So given that I'm not really blown away by those offers, definitely not going to package them together. We'll see if when I put them in deals just by themselves, whether there's anything interesting for them. I tend to think there won't be. Those of you who are sick of hearing about when we had our Kansas City playthrough and my obsession with bringing on Kansas City players aren't going to be happy to hear that I think the most interesting offer straight up for Moreno is Jorge Lebron, a player who was with the Royals for several years, been with St. Louis the last couple seasons. Respectable defensive outfielder, really fast. You can see he led the National League with 43 steals last year. Ironman injury proneness, just kind of an average-ish offensive bat, a little above average to be fair. Left-handed bat, which we could use. He is also, in his arbitration years and expected to make about $8 million next season, so probably a player that we couldn't bring back. I guess there is an argument that what we really need help in right now is our offense. So we bring LeBron on board for Moreno and give our offense a boost. I mean, Moreno's having another excellent year for us with a 2.40 ERA, but a 2.40 ERA over 48 and 2/3 innings. We'd probably be second in the league in runs allowed without him, just like we're second in the league in runs allowed with him. So there is definitely an argument to be made that if we're not going to keep Moreno after this year, to pick up LeBron for him now, give us a slightly better chance, I think, with the solid bat to win this year. But then in the off season, I don't know how much we're going to get for LeBron if we need to move on from him. I'm thinking about it, but not sure if we're going to do it or not. And we can also shop Fuchs now that we've got Heel and Quinones. If we get an interesting offer for Fuchs, we don't have to bring him back the rest of the way. And LeBron is out there for Fuchs too. That one feels a little better to me. With Heel, we're still solid defensively, not much of a hitter. Quinones, still respectable defensively, not much of a hitter. Fuchs is a little better offensively than both of those guys. Great personality and really good defensively. Also an Iron Man. But he's still a below-average offensive player. We'd lose a tiny bit of offense and I think a tiny bit of defense overall if we move to Heel and Quinones. But adding LeBron's lineup bat into our lineup. He's an above-average offensive player any way you want to measure it. And although that's not all that exciting to a great team, to a team like the Pirates that are 13th in the league in runs scored, it's kind of an interesting option. There is another guy who interests me a little bit for Fuchs, and it's Elijah Helton, a closer from the Twins. 26 years old, making the major league minimum. His number is expected to jump to $4 million next year because he's been a closer this season with 23 saves, 2.28 ERA. Over his limited major league career, he's certainly been above average pitcher in terms of his ERA plus and his FIP minus. And he is a much lower number for future seasons. At only $4 million for next year. That makes me think, do we bring on Helton for Fuchs? And then we go back and we trade away Moreno for LeBron. Get a lot more offense by having LeBron playing every day for us. And we don't lose all that much pitching-wise because we've got Helton. And then we still have LeBron and Helton both heading into arbitration-eligible seasons where if we want to move on from them, and we probably will almost certainly need to move on from LeBron with an $8 million number, we may be able to fit Helton in at a little less than $4 million. I think I'm going to shake things up. I don't feel like I'm getting totally fair value potentially for Moreno, but we can't possibly pay him $12 million next year. So I think that cuts down his value a little bit. So we're going to try to send a deal for Fuchs for Helton and then come back and do Moreno for LeBron and see what the team looks like and what else we can get for those guys. And we can't really get much in addition to Helton. So we're going to go ahead and move on from Fuchs, bring on Elijah Helton to our bullpen. Fans not pleased that we moved on from Fuchs, but we were going to have to do that anyways. Not a huge bump to fan interest, made it sound worse than it really was. And now we go and we bring another Kansas City Royal onto the team. We're going to move on from Moreno because we're not going to pay him that big money next year. And we're going to build something around Jorge LeBron, who hopefully can help jumpstart our offense the rest of this season. And it looks like we can pick up a couple additional players in addition to LeBron. Shortstop Pepe Barron, nice personality, kind of minor league depth. Unlikely that he's ever going to play in the majors for us. And then catcher Juan Harris, another guy, just minor league depth. Don't think he's really much of a prospect. But we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. Fans not happy that we lost Moreno, but the fans happy that we brought on LeBron. Lost a point of fan interest overall, but with Helton and LeBron on the major league roster, we've made some pretty significant changes. Helton going right into the closer role, much more economical, and I'm guessing that LeBron is going to go right into the lineup for us. Yep, LeBron batting leadoff, playing left field against both right-handers and left-handers. So we've made a lot of changes. Our catching duo of Heel and Quinones is completely different. We had Fuchs and Drew Romo a couple of days ago. We may have a shortstop of the future in Linares and Flavio Avanzi. Tony Fonseca is gone. We now have LeBron playing in the outfield to hopefully jumpstart our offense, give us another left-handed bat, which we really need. And then on the pitching staff, got a new closer in Elijah Helton. What's going to happen over these last 2 months of the season, I don't know. But I think we did get a little bit of value for some of the guys that weren't going to be back with us no matter what. And with Helton and LeBron now, we have 2 guys headed into arbitration that we can potentially move on from. Just like we were honestly going to be doing with Fuchs and Moreno. So we'll see what happens. Feel like we had to do something. I don't know that this makes us contenders. It certainly probably doesn't make us contenders. But it makes the team interesting as we head into these last 2 months of the season, that's for sure. Can see looking at the salaries here, we've obviously taken some money out of the projected salary for next season. May need to move on from LeBron. Hopefully he can be a decent bat for us. Who knows what we're going to do with Danny Mendez, but he's been an important first baseman for us this year. Would like to bring back Estrada and Gotti as part of our starting rotation. And then our new closer, Helton, also has a relatively big number. But we've definitely shaken things up. We'll see how the team plays over these last couple months of the season. And we did get another win yesterday, still 8 games behind in the division. Still 4th place in the NL Central as we begin August. And we're now 6 games out of the wild card. So we're definitely a long shot for either the division or the wild card. There's no question about that. Winning those last couple games, we did get up to 500 in July. As I talked about, the goal right now is to have a winning record in both August and September. We may not be able to close the gap if we do that, but would like to be able to go into the coming off season feeling better about this team, whether or not we make the playoffs or not. Currently 12th in runs scored, 2nd in runs allowed. So if we keep pitching well, just need to score some more runs. And the hope is that with our new left fielder in LeBron and our new shortstop in Luis Linares, we may get a little more offense out of those positions than we've been used to over the first 4 months of the season. Another week in the books. The Pirates stand at 54-60, 6.5 behind. Taking a look at the standings, still in 4th place, obviously. 5.5 behind for the wild card. So made up a little ground over the past week. We'll see if we can keep plugging away at it. Another week in the books for the Pirates, and we'll change the view going forward to look at the schedule. 5.5 back in the division, 5 back in the wild card. So we're slowly scratching our way closer, even though we're only 5-5 over our last 10. Looking at the team schedule for this week, an important week for us. We've got 5 against St. Louis, including a doubleheader at home, and then we've got 3 against Cincinnati. So those are 2 teams that are obviously in front of us in the NL Central. St. Louis has been running away with the division since they swept us earlier in July, although you can see they're really struggling lately. The Cubs right back on top of them. And then the Reds are 500, so 3 games ahead of us. So we got to win both of these series, which means got to go 5-3 over the next week. We'll see what happens. And we got off to a good start. We did take the series on the home against St. Louis, 3-2. Won the first against Cincinnati and then lost 2 in a row. So it was a 4-4 week when all was said and done. 5 games back in the division, and we are now 7 back for the wild card. So feel like we had an opportunity that week. Last week we obviously did well against the Cardinals, taking 3 out of 5. And now Cincinnati, the Cubs, and the Cardinals are all within half a game of each other. You can see these teams aren't having great years. It's a very competitive division. But I feel like we just don't quite have enough. Now we're going on the road at Baltimore and then 3 at St. Louis here. Those 3 games at St. Louis are going to be huge. We're going to have to take 2 out of 3 there. Looking at Baltimore, they're a team with a losing record. Got to take 2 out of 3 there. We just got to keep winning series. It sounds simple and trite, and maybe it is, but that's what we've got to do. And that should just about do it for these Pirates. Swept by Baltimore, swept by St. Louis. We have now lost 8 games in a row as we approach the end of August. It was always a long shot, but now it is. It's not over, but we're 8.5 behind for the division, and we're 10 back for the wild card. So 8 losses in a row is just crushing for this team. I mean, at this point, sadly, the question is whether we're going to have a better winning percentage than we had our first year running the team, which after the playoff season last year is just incredibly disappointing. And we finally broke the losing streak and played a little better over the last 4 days of August. Swept the Cubs before losing at home to San Francisco. But you can see we're 9.5 behind in the division at this point. The Reds are now kind of pulling away from both the Cardinals and the Cubs, who had led the division earlier in the year. So 9.5 back for the division, 10 behind for the wild card. You can see the number of days we have left is growing very short at this point, so we're likely to be mathematically eliminated pretty soon. Going to go down as a very disappointing season for the Pirates. 4 games below 500 in August, 12-16. So to meet that goal that we laid out at the beginning of the month of at least having a winning record over the last 2 months of the season. We're not going to have a winning record in both months, which was one of our goals, but to get to a winning record overall, we're going to have to be 5 games over 500 in the month of September. And given that we've only reached that goal once this year back in May, going to be tough. We've actually slipped back to 13th in runs scored, still second in runs allowed, so just not generating enough offense. Luis Linares, since he joined us, hitting 240, below average-ish offensive player. But with the glove, still could become the answer for us at shortstop. His arbitration number has gone down a tiny bit. And check in on what Jorge Lebron is doing for us. 264, 4 homers, and 110 at-bats. He's been a little above average in terms of his OPS plus, but a little below average actually in terms of his WRC plus. So not quite the offense that we were looking for by bringing those 2 guys on board. Quinones at catcher hitting just 186. So not going particularly well. Elijah Helton, since we brought him on board, 4.76 ERA, over 11 1/3 innings. Does have 8 saves, but is also 0-2. So doesn't seem like things are going particularly well for the Pirates right now. And here at September roster expansion, we're actually going to bring up Victor Serrano. Remember, this was a minor league free agent signing we made at the beginning of the year. Signed him to a contract, $1.5 million if he was promoted to the major league roster. I don't think he's going to hit enough to be our shortstop of the future. but he's angry because he's not playing in the majors. He's obviously good defensively, has some speed. Hit pretty well in A ball, not quite as good in Double A, and you can see lately in Triple A he hasn't done all that much. But we want to give him an opportunity at the majors to find out exactly what we have or don't have with him, and hopefully with him being on the major league roster, if we do want to try to re-sign him, maybe he'll be a little more amenable to that. And then we're also going to bring up Omar Lopez, longtime member of our pitching staff. Has spent the whole year in AAA, 3.22 ERA over 106 and a third innings. We've really had, I don't know if we've had a single pitcher injury this year. I don't want to jinx myself, and I probably just did, but honestly, the injured list in general this year at the major league level has been very lightly used. Now, at the minor league level, we talked about we lost Luis Molina to a torn flexor tendon. Was one of our top pitching prospects. I don't know if he still is at this point. The other guy that I thought about bringing up was one of our top prospects, Luis Longoria, number 2 overall pick in 2035 and number 14 prospect overall in the game. Finally got him out of rookie ball this year, and you can see he's had a stratospheric rise through our organization. 3.05 ERA in A, a $1.89 ERA in 9 games in High A, pitched 4 games in Double A with a 2.55 ERA, and now has pitched 3 games in Triple A with a 1.02 ERA. You can see he's just got potential for absolutely electric stuff. You might ask why I'm not bringing him up. I don't love that he's fragile. We've got him on a 80 pitch count already in the minors, but honestly, if he doesn't get hurt, he will be up with us next year. I just kind of feel like the move from rookie ball at the end of last year all the way up to potentially the majors may be a little dramatic. We've got a good pitching coach in AAA, so I'm going to let him finish up the year down there. But at least we will get to see a little bit of what Omar Lopez can do for us, and as I mentioned, also going to see what Victor Serrano can do. I don't know that he is going to end up in the lineup. He's going to be our second baseman. All right, so we're going to see what he can do every day. I might actually switch. Serrano still can get a little better at playing second base. Well, that's where he's going to be playing. And then Luis Linares, he's kind of fully developed at shortstop. I'll let the manager go with, those guys are pretty proficient, pretty good defensively, but it'll be good to see what they both can do over the rest of the season. We would need an incredible finish we're going to need an incredible finish just to get to 500, much less to be in the playoff mix. But hopefully we can find out a little more about these players on our team over the next month and start preparing for the 2041 season when our job could definitely be on the line, assuming that Mr. Nutting doesn't fire us after this train wreck and dumpster fire of 2040. So we ended up losing the series to San Francisco 2-1 at the Marlins and home against the Dodgers this week. And we're getting dangerously close to the point where we're going to be mathematically eliminated, unfortunately. And it was a good week for the Pirates. Took 2 out of 3 at Miami, and then we swept the Dodgers at home. So we're trying to keep it respectable. We're still 9 games back. We're obviously not going to we're not going to win the division, and we're not going to make the wild card. We're 8 games out of the wild card now with 70 and 76. So we've only got 16 games left. So those are almost insurmountable gaps for us to make up, but we're going to be at the Nationals and then at Milwaukee for the next 7 games before we get to finish with a long homestand, and then we'll go on the road at the Cubs for the last 3 games of the year. So really would love to get this team to 500, which is going to require an 11-5 or better finish, but it would be nice to not be below 500, given our expectations that we'd be competing for a playoff spot at the beginning of the year. It was a respectable week for us with a 4-3 record, but we need a lot more than respectable at this point. I guess technically we still haven't been eliminated. Wait, how is that possible? We must have been eliminated, but I'm not seeing the email. But let's look at the standings. No, we're technically not eliminated yet, but we're 9 games out in the division, 6.5 out for the wild card. So I guess, yeah, we're still alive for the wild card technically. Have just 9 games to go. So we're going to need to go 7-2 to get to 500. Probably going to need to go 9-0 to have any chance at the playoffs. And even if we go 9-0, I don't think we'll make the playoffs. So we'll go game by game here until we're eliminated for the playoffs, which could be very shortly, and until we're eliminated for having a 500 record, which may not be that much longer. Did get a win against the Braves. Lived to survive another day. Game 2 of the final homestand of the regular season against the Braves. 13-inning loss. Uh-oh, we see a message. That means we're probably done. Nope, still not done. Got some injuries to our minor leaguers. Partially torn labrum for Orlando Rodriguez. Definitely not optimal. Although he's a 32-year-old. I guess he's just organizational filler. I feel bad for him still, but not a prospect. We've actually gotten a little more attendance here down the stretch when we did lower our ticket price, but our revenue per game is still going to be down materially from last year. And with the money that we spent on starting a charity, we're actually still going to make money this year. It'll be interesting to see what Nutting does, because we're still going to deliver a pretty nice profit for him. We picked up a lot of cash through trades this year, which is certainly not a repeatable thing. But you can see we're going to basically fail pretty miserably on every goal that he's set out for us. So he's not going to be pleased with us. Given that he's a penny pincher to begin with, it's probably not going to do much for our budget for next year. Ooh, it's taken such a long time. Makes me feel that we lost the game and we're going to be eliminated from the playoffs. We have lost the game. And we have been eliminated from the playoffs. And all we're left for now is we need to go 6-0 down the stretch to get to 500. If I was a betting man, I would not think that this team is going to be able to do that. But we'll try. We've got 6 against the Cubs to finish off. Can we sweep the Cubbies in a home and away series? We cannot. The Pirates are going to have a losing record. So let's see how bad it ends up being. So we did get wins in the last 2 home games of the year. Let's see if we can take 2 out of 3 in Chicago to finish off the season. And we do take 2 out of 3 in Chicago to get to 79-83 on this disappointing season. Take a quick look at some of the stats. Obviously, we'll go a lot deeper in our season recap episode in our next episode. We ended up 13th in the league in runs scored, 2nd in the league in runs allowed. Very good defense. So we wasted another great season of pitching because we just can't hit. Did go 15-9 in September, which was our best month of the entire season. Unfortunately, we had a lot of bad and mediocre months before that. So we did end up over the last 2 months of the year 27-25, so a little bit over 500, but still 10 games out in the division. Ended up in third, got past the Cubs with those wins we had against them down the stretch, and we ended up 6 out of the wild card. So not a good season. Looking at the expanded standings, did have a plus 12 run score differential for the year, so we were 3 worse than expected. Expected to go 82 and 80. So it's not a great season. There's no doubt about it. We'll recap everything in our next episode, find out what our budget looks like. But after a great improvement in season 1 and an even bigger improvement in season 2, these Pirates have come back down to earth in our 3rd season as general manager of the team. And we've got to start putting a plan together as to how to get things better next season, both on the field and in the business office. And that's what we'll be focusing on in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.